Now without any further ado, it's time for me to take you all towards the next session planned for all of you. It's time for the next panel, and it gives me immense pleasure to introduce the next subject of the panel. So the next subject is the storytelling for Gen Z and millennials, finessing the art of crafting compelling stories. I think Gen Z, millennials, the discussions have been going on since forever, and now it's time to articulate a bit more about it and also to understand the art of crafting compelling stories. And to join us in this discussion, we have with us Bhawna Gupta, Director, Client Relations, Hill and Knowlton Strategies, India. Please put your hands together for Bhawna Gupta. Ma'am, can we please have you on stage?
Yeah, the hand mics.
Bhawna Gupta, once again, if you can hear me, would like you to join us on stage. Next up, joining Bhawna is Chhavi Leekha, VP Corporate Communications and Brand Reputation. Please give it up once again. Baja do yaar, baja do. Can we please have Chhavi Leekha on stage? Guys, if you can hear me and if you're outside, once again, would request you to please join us on stage. Bhawna Gupta, Chhavi Leekha would request you to join us on stage. Joining them will be Manu Kumar, Head of Marketing and Corporate Communications, Hero Electric Vehicles. Sir, can we please have you on stage? Thank you so much. Joining them will be Rohit Dubey, VP Corporate Communications, Reliance Jio Infocomm. Welcome, sir. It's a pleasure to have all of you. And to conduct the session now, I would request our session chair to please come on board. Vinita Bhatia, National President, Media and Communications, WICCI. Please put your hands together for Vinita Bhatia. And once again, reminding the subject for the panel, storytelling for Gen Z and millennials, finessing the art of crafting compelling stories. A kind request to all the panel members and of course the session chair Vinita Bhatia to please keep the time limit in mind since we have a very packed day. So once the buzzer rings, it's a sign for you to wrap it up. A kind request to please take care of that. Thank you so much. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. So good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the post-lunch session is always a tricky one, but we are headed towards discussing a very interesting topic and a very core TG, which is the millennials and the Gen Z. So we are going to dive deeper into the conversation about storytelling for the millennials and the Gen Z, and also finessing the art of crafting compelling storytelling. With me, I have a very eclectic and seasoned mix of business leaders on stage. While they've been introduced, but I'd just like to introduce them once again. So on my left, we have Mr. Rohit Dubey, who's the VP Corporate Communications, Reliance Jio Infocomm. Welcome, Rohit. Then also we have Bhawna Gupta, Director, Client Relations, Hill and Knowlton Strategies. Mr. Manu Kumar, Head of Marketing and Corporate Communication, Hero Electric Vehicles.
Thank you.
And in the end, we also have Chhavi Leekha, VP Corporate Communications and Brand Reputation at IndiGo. So welcome all of you. Now, moving on to our topic, while we seem to know that we do know the millennials and we do know the Gen Z, but it's been often noticed that we use the term or tend to use the term millennials very loosely and sometimes even say, hey, the youngsters think like this or the millennials think like this. So I'd just like to set the context and the definition very right. So millennials are the generation which are born after 1981 till about 1996. So typically they would be around 27 to about 42 years of age. also called the Gen Y or the digital native. And let me say, they are about 35% of our workforce, right? And the second that we are going to talk about are the Gen Z, which were typically born after 1997 to 2012, which means they're in the age group of 11 to around 26, which means they're still in school, the teenagers, college going, or they will form part of the early workforce. But the first one, which is the millennials, they form 35% of our workforce. They are the decision makers, they have the pocket. However, it seems that the Gen Z is quite influencing the decision makers as well. So on that note, before we dive deeper into our conversations, I'd like to hear from you all. Bhavna, maybe you can take this one. Could you expand on the characteristics of millennials and Gen Z, their likes, interests, etc.?
See, for me, it took me a while, to understand what's the difference. And I say, they have unique characteristics, and the way we talk about them is as if there are some different species. Because we tell them, isko is bracket mein rakhiye, isko is bracket mein rakhiye. But however, they are the ones we're talking to now. We cannot avoid it. As marketeers, as brand builders, as corporates, we are talking to them because they make the major chunk of, what we sell, how we sell, who consumes our product and brands, etc. Now, there's a very thin line between millennials and Gen Zs because both are digitally evolved. While you say millennials were there when technology was evolving in India, they were there as the innovators, and Gen Zs are the one we are born with digital. In the sense, they're born with a mobile phone in their hands. They're born with AIs. They're born with technology. But the pure characteristics of these two is their attention span is so low that the way we tell stories to them, the way we use visuals, the way we do narratives is, you see how we use TikToks, how we do use Reels. Like I love saying that, what do you call story snacks. इनको ये सब अच्छा लगता है. What is quick, what is quickly consumable, how we tell their stories, visually how we impact it, how we make it more creative, because their attention span is very low.
Sure, we'll get to all of that,
Yeah.
but just still want to be very, very clear and crisp about, their characteristics and how they're different. Rohit, would you like to take that?
So, like Bhavna said, digital native. They are born digital. And I look at it in two ways. Number one is that we generally go with definition which are given to us by US. But the evolution of digital technology in US was very different from what it is today in India. So essentially, early part of millennials, I would still put in with Gen X, which we are, and our children who are typically Gen Z guys, are the one who I would say are really digitally native kind of a people. So maybe 4-5 year here and there adjustment is what I would typically do to get to that particular set of people. Now, there was this interesting chat I had because I had to come here. So my daughter and a few of her friends were there for their internship. So I made them sit in a circle like this and I started rapid fire. And then what I realized is that the kind of answers they were giving and all that, and they themselves said that we can't concentrate on one thing more than few minutes or even seconds. We have to jump on other because there is so much of feed coming into us. So let us also understand the reason of why this is happening. So because of digital technology, the amount of information which is coming, and especially the way we have put our feeds on, it is continuously on and they are getting it. Now we as Gen X people or maybe early millennials are not reacting so much, but they are reacting. The channels and all we'll discuss later, but the channels, etc., are also very different for them. They are not on the channels which we are using. They are not consuming the content and doing things the way we do. Okay, that's sort of, and being digitally native also brings another thing to them is that they are very comfortable with technology. And before, I think just a small example I'll give, and then I think I'll wrap up. So if you see, TikTok shifted out of India because of regulation, but they were very quick to adopt to another thing, which was Reels. And Reels has taken place, just shifted all the loads of Reels in terms of telecom volumes has shifted to sort of Reels now. So they are also very quick in adoption, which somehow we in our generation were not able to do. So if you typically look at a guy who is able to, number one, use technology, pick up any technology, understand in few seconds as to what it is doing, beyond that, quickly, move out, do a scan, but they never do a deep dive. That is what all these guys told me, that we don't have a habit of deep diving into any of these things. So that's how I would like to put it.
Thanks, Rohit. Just like to make some of these blurring lines even more clear as far as millennials and Gen Z are concerned. I was trying to kind of read up and see, we tend to loosely use the term millennials, etc. But if they are in the age bracket, 27 going up to 42, so typically the three very stark differences, one figured that essentially the millennials, while they were growing up, may or may not have been born into technology so much. They adapted to it a little later, versus the Gen Z, which is born, they're 11 to 25, 26-year-old. They were already born into very advanced technology. And at the same time, hence, the ability, millennials versus Gen Z, the ability to use millennials 2 screens versus multiple screens that they're able to use. And hence also the difference between their attention span, something that we've been talking about. But one very interesting characteristic, which I will just leave it at that, and we will delve deeper into, how to go about storytelling, is that the millennials, they did not really, they are very brand-centric. They want to wear good brands, whereas the Gen Z today does not care so much about the brand, and we'll talk about that a little later. At the same time, the millennials are, because they've grown up the hard way, they really want to work very hard, they are very conscious of success, and in a way, one would say they're more self-centered, whereas something that we were discussing backstage, the Gen Z is more bothered about purpose, right? They've already grown into technology, very savvy with that, and of course, the way they communicate is different. So, but they're more they want to know what is the purpose that they're living for or are going to be working for. So, with those very distinct characteristics, I'll just go on to the next thing which comes naturally. So, Manu, you've been in the business for a very long time and across multiple sectors. So, obviously, the techniques that we use in our communication to deal with these two generations, millennial and the Gen Z, even currently as you're working on, electrical vehicles, how do you think these techniques of communication have evolved over a period of time?
Thank you. I will not delve too much on Gen Z and millennials being spoken about. I think the challenge for the marketer today, when you target these cohorts or these generations of people, is very simple. You need to understand them first. You can't, just go ahead and give out the same communication the way you used to communicate with the earlier generation. You need to understand. So, one of the things is that you need to have great insights about these people. You can't just straight away go and start marketing your products to them. You need to understand them. You need to, build a relationship with them. And then over a period of time, plug in your products. Now, plugging in your product is not direct that, just say that buy my product. They will not just buy your product because a brand is going to say. One is that, loyalty in today's time is very less, especially when it comes to the brand and the audience. So what you need to do is that, you have to build your brand in front of them. And all of those, the integrity of the brand, the trust, you have to build a trust with these, human beings, you need to have a purpose, as you said. So one of the things when we talk of purpose is now a very often repeated word in most of the, when brands talk about it. But I think you need to walk the talk. You can't just say, that my product is sustainable or my product is green, etc. You actually have to walk the talk. They have to actually see that the brand is actually doing that thing, and then you build in that purpose, which they feel that it will help them, achieve something in their life. So I think what as the question you asked is that what are the mediums? So, obviously we know that digital is very prevalent. So you have to look at now, again, digital, we have been doing that for many years now. And technology is changing very quickly, very fast. But I think what is also important is the kind of content which you put out for these, millennials and the Gen Zs. Now, as Bhavna said, snackable content. There is hardly any attention span, but I think that is the challenge. So, in that 30-second or 25-second of your audiovisual content, how you are able to, those challenges still remain. These are not, really sorted out because there's no brand loyalty. We feel that, typically a brand will say, if I reduce my prices, someone will come and buy it. But if you look at the long term, they quickly skip from one channel to another. They quickly skip from one brand to another. So, over a period of time, so what is important is that you have to build a brand in front of them. It is not just, if you're looking at a short-term sale, yeah, it may happen. But, if you want to retain your customer, you want to, work with them over a period of time because, they are not just buying today. They are going to be your consumers over a period of time when they grow a little older, etc. So I think building a brand, showing what your brand stands for, how it is going to be helpful to the Gen Zs. So those you have to build over a period of time, and then I think you can reap benefit and work with them, build a relationship with them.
So Manu, I'm going to take 3-4 words from there. You spoke about walking the talk. The brand has to walk the talk. Second, of course, sustainability came into picture. We're going to dwell on that later. But also loyalty, digital platforms. So here I want to understand, since we're talking about storytelling. So are there any examples of compelling storytelling that anybody from the panel would like to share? Because this generation, how millennials as well as Gen Z, how do we win their trust? And how do we build an emotional connect if they are moving so fast? So any examples that you'd like to share? Anybody? Chhavi?
I'm not sure if this is working. I'll just take that one. Thanks, Mukesh. So Vinita, I'll just quickly go through what each one of them has said right now. Agree with all of it. I think attention spans, content which the Gen Z would sort of, look at or what you would sort of inspire, interact and engage them has to have a sense of purpose. Your brand needs to stand for a core value that they are able to identify with. I think that is very, very important. And the kind of content or storytelling that I believe works should be, it needs to have a reason, a format that kind of they identify themselves with. Like I say, a picture has says 1,000 words or is worth 1,000 words. I think video content, entertaining, classic, purpose-driven. I think video content is something that would be a very important medium for a storytelling medium. Kind of storytelling would be, I would say, has to be either immersive or it has to be user-generated content. I think those are the areas that these Gen Z and perhaps even the millennials pick up, understand, engage, and sort of work with very, very ethos in their ethos, so to say. Like I take the example of something called Dream Crazy by Nike. It was a campaign that ran in 2018. Colin Kaepernick ran the contest, and it was all about the fact that dreams being called crazy is not an insult. It is actually a compliment. It became a mark of empowerment. It became something that the youth identified with. It's great to dream crazy. So stuff like that, which they are able to sort of, build a connect with. That kind of storytelling, that kind of story generation really works. The other one I would look at is something we have started, which is community-driven, user-generated content. We've recently started, we've tied up with National Geographic, and we are doing this community building called #NoFilter. It's basically to do with anyone and everyone out there who's interested in photography can go and post their pictures on a specially developed platform that we've put out called No Filter by IndiGo. And that is in alliance with National Geographic. So all of these pictures will be played up on the National Geographic channel, our platforms, which is more than 15 million users, etc. And the best pictures will be taken up and then be judged by the likes of Imtiaz Ali and veteran photographers like Raghu Rai. So that kind of, I mean, we just launched this about 3 weeks ago, and it's amazing to see that we already have like 9 million entries. It's crazy. So that kind of storytelling, that kind of content building really kind of, in my view, works well.
Sure. So we're going to come back on user-generated content, etc., dwell on that a bit more. But really, I'd like to understand, Manu, Bhavna, Rohit, you all have been, dealing with so many brands over a period of time. Still, how do we build that emotional connect, the stories?
Yeah, so let me give a couple of examples. I mean, I'll try not to use from here. Maybe 2 examples. I don't want to. So one is, one of the kids told me about Mama Earth. Okay, and then I said, why do you connect with that brand and all that? So, and the reason given and the purpose I think was picked up by Manu was that they plant a tree. I said, no, but that is done by many other brands, including I think IndiGo does. So I said, she said, no, but my connect is that, and they show it, where they are planting tree for you and all that kind of stuff. I said, but Glenn Levitt has been doing it for years. So I was thinking myself, I couldn't tell kids that. But then again, for them, it is a story is there, and there is the implementation of that story happening, and that is where the connect starts building. So it is not only what you go out and say. So I'll give you how it works negatively also. There is a very beautiful ad which came and it became controversial. It is an ad of Pepsi. Wendell Jenner, she's a model. She did this ad, and this was basically a protest happening. All these young kids are there and all that, and a protest is about peace, etc., and all that. And they showed that there is a set of policemen there in US who was trying to stop them. And then she, takes a can of Pepsi and goes and then gives it to the police fellow, and he then lets everybody go. So the story was good, the messaging was there, but when we are telling story as brand, we have to be very conscious of the context and our surrounding. And the problem what happened with that story, it was just on back of Black Lives Matters. So you have a Black Lives Matters where a police person is actually beating a black guy, and here you are saying the same white man, policeman, in a very good, this thing that he is, being pally. So there is no problem with the storytelling when you, as a brand, you are able to engage and you are able to live to the sort of, ethos which you are trying to present to this younger generation. They live for purpose. They live for, the kind of societal good they can do. So there is a lot of, societal good that they want to see. And I have seen this as a teacher and a student both, because I teach these PGP student at one of the IIMs. And I was also a student with some of these kids in ISB policy class. So I had this set of young kids, young professional, who had very good degrees from IITs and all that, and they were sitting there doing something in education sector, doing something for healthcare sector, and when I asked that, they said, there is a purpose for me, okay? And then the way they used to connect was that when I asked, and being a communicator and a brand person, I used to ask, what do you think about this brand? They used to always say, they just say, they do not, and they gave me example of some of the brand, I don't want to name them, but they said they came up with very good campaigns. The campaign was able to touch you as a human being. It was about unity, camaraderie in the society and all that. And when there was a backlash, you withdrew that campaign. So as a brand, you have to stand for what you say and not get back. And you have to be consistent. There's another example I'll just quickly quote. There is this HBR study, you can go through that, of how this polarization in social media works along with CEOs. And in that, there are one brand particularly they talk about is Starbucks, and they say two different issue, pride. So we are in Pride Month now, and they celebrate the Pride Month and all that. So there's a brand connect. There are a lot of internal communication which happens. There are a lot of storytelling. When Black Lives Matter happened, I mean, some of these guys who are in typically this millennial and Gen Z category, they started supporting that, and then the HR came down heavily on them saying that, no, this is something you can't do. Now, as a brand, you can't say that, okay, I am there for this purpose, which is good for humanity, but I'm not there for this purpose, which again is good for humanity, but it does not suit me, as a commercial organization. So that is something which we need to be very careful when we are doing the storytelling.
Thank you. Very relevant examples there, Rohit. From the first example that you share, my takeaway, which is the Mama Earth story that you shared, that my takeaway, you said that many brands have actually been planting trees when you aside. So essentially what is important that you also communicate what you do. You may have been doing something behind the scene, but if you have not put it out in your communication, not many people may know about it, and two, then the brand may or may not be associated. And if we are talking to the Gen Z, which is very purpose-driven, it is important to put out the story. Yeah? Yeah.
I mean, as Reliance, we never spoke about it. First time we said this thing, 2.4 crore trees is what we have planted. We never spoke about it, but this, Environment Day is the first time actually we have started speaking about
I
it.
think that is again something in terms of communication over the generations from the Gen X to Gen Y and Gen Z, which has changed. That in Gen X, we were always told that acha karo aur uske bare mein batao mat, right? Don't talk about it. Mitti pao, karo aur batao mat. Millennials, I am not very sure. I think perhaps it is the generation who, if does good, likes to show it. Whereas Gen Z, which we understood that is more purpose-driven, they are purpose-driven but also very transparent and clear that if you talk about it, then stick to it and don't change your stance. Yeah? So something that came up in the discussion, some of the words that came up, since their attention spans are very limited and etc., and catering to both the generations, how do we build trust and relatability in our storytelling? Trust is very important. Bhavna, would you like to take that?
When you talk about Gen Zs and millennials, there's one common thing. She realizes that purpose is common, right? However, long-term sustenance, walking the last mile and making sure everyone gets impacted positively is what they're looking for. For example, if you're looking at, look at Dove. Now, the Real Beauty campaign of Dove hits so well with Gen Zs and millennials because they use real women in that ad. Of all colors, all shapes, all sizes. For them, Dove talking about we use this minerals, we use this ingredient doesn't hit the button. What hits the button is that Dove, that product, that brand is for everyone, for my mom, for me, for you, for my auntie, or even for the person who's working in my home. Real beauties. So that hits so well. For example, look, Airbnb, how it differentiated beautifully from others was it said, we accept. That was just the campaign they used. We accept. Now, how they translated that into real world was that anyone can go and book an Airbnb. It doesn't matter if you're straight or queer. So, what Gen Zs and millennials and what we realize is when we're just telling the story is it has to be real. It has to be authentic. It has to be trustable. It has to be long-term and global. One part of India mein kuch ho raha hai, but does it also affect, and I'm not going to get into that, but you see what's happening. There's India, there's Bharat. Now Gen Zs want to see a seamless, a brand, a corporate which they can trust everywhere silently. So I think that walk the talk, the purpose, and a brand, it resonates with their DNA makes a lot of sense. For example, if Rohit uses a brand and I use the same brand, it has to be high five because say, oh, you use that brand, That means Rohit has to be a person who's authentic, who's real, who's trusting, because he uses that brand. So Gen Z's के लिए बहुत important है कि it has to have my flavor and my DNA to resonate.
So I would say that's a great positive influence and a starting point for trust. But does that really translate into loyalty? What are the kind of stories we could build to generate that loyalty?
I think I'll just end one line and I'll pass it on. Loyalty is as long as you do it. Like he said, andar kuch, bahar kuch, then you've lost the game there and then.
Manu, what are your thoughts on that?
So I think, let me make a statement. Everybody is a PR comms person sitting here. केवल PR मत करिए. The problem is a lot of brands only do PR. And campaign करते हैं. The brief, and I'm not only saying it's the agencies, it's the brands also. One of the briefs which everyone gives is, yeah, let's do some campaign. Today, people, and especially the younger generation, will make you out. They'll kill you on social media. कि ये PR है, PR कर रहे हो. So I think, we are ourselves giving a bad name to our own industry. So let's not do only PR. Let's do good. And, things will automatically. Today, viral का ज़माना है. हम बोलते हैं viral करते हैं video. Viral तब होता है जब आप, it's not just only money you spend, but, genuinely people start liking that activity which we did, and then, people start talking about it. You may get little less than by spending money, but I think that is what they're looking. In fact, one of the issues which influencers is that, why companies started using influencers, etc., was that the Gen Zs wanted to listen from someone of their age, someone who they can, relate with. They don't relate with the brand, but, people who are using it. So that's why we use it. But again, influencer, we say कि because that person has, X million of number of, followers on Instagram or somewhere, so let's use that person because हमें इतने like मिल जाएंगे, how many views we'll get. But I think, that is what this generation does not like. You will get called out. So I think you have to first do. So it's, you can't market to them. You have to market with them, So it's co-creation, collaborations, that's why, what they like. That's why you see a lot of companies doing collaboration with, their consumers, asking them for, sending their photographs with the product, etc. And I think those are the things which work much better than just, doing a campaign, making an AV बनाते हैं, उसको viral कर देंगे, and then we'll say the metrics is that we got X million likes, etc. I personally feel that how many times will you do that? And you'll get called out because, ultimately you have to show that this is the kind of activity, this is the purpose which you do it. So for example, if I am a sustainable company or I say that, I am a green company because we make electric vehicles, but ultimately, I can't do greenwashing. A lot of companies, just because do greenwashing saying that we are a sustainable company and हमने इतने carbon, बचाया, etc., etc. But they need to see that on the ground. I think that is very important.
Sure. Chhavi, I'd like to ask this. So we've been talking of, authenticity, etc., and how to reach out. We were talking of viral marketing. But the role of videos, images, what would you say in how important they are and what kind of role do they play in compelling storytelling?
I'll take off from where Manu said. I am completely of the view that created content, well, it will do just what an ad does for you, really. In that sense, when you put an ad on TV or in a newspaper, it's what you are saying. But when it is content which is authentic, perhaps which is third party, it works beautifully. And I'll just share a couple of examples on that. Just this Mother's Day, one of our campaigns went completely viral, where this, one of our cabin crew members, and as everyone knows, we only have, girl power on board. So one of the girls on board actually made a video of her talking to the passengers, saying this is the first flight I am doing as a cabin crew. And there was her mom, who had been a cabin crew with us for 6 years. And she was like, you cannot believe the amount of pride and happiness I have today to be serving alongside her and to see her in uniform and be here. And that video just went viral. It was not created by us. It was not something that we put out, but it was self-created. It was put out by that cabin crew member. and it became viral. Similarly, when our customers, people who are flying for the first time, or people who are taking their parents on board for the first time, or even, you have 2 or 3-year-olds who are IndiGo fans, and you have their parents making content when they're flying with us, and the way you can see the happiness. That is the kind of content that people relate to, are able to identify with, and then they, and those are the things that become viral in that sense. So I think authentic stories, which actually come maybe from not from your own mouth, and I would say in a lot of ways that is PR, where you have an endorsement from a third party created. I think that really makes a much
I
larger
understand
impact.
that that's kind of become, user-generated content or
Yes.
interactive stories have become the order of the day. So I essentially come from a sales background, and I remember about at least 15 years ago, if you were dealing with a linear medium, which is, let's say, even television or print, and you would go to a client, they would say, "Kuch interactive kar do." There was no clear brief. "Kuch interactive kar do." And from then until, let's say, about 2015, 16, when the OTTs started getting launched in the country, and I remember, besides Hotstar, Z5, etc., I'd come across a company called LF Group, which are basically into user-generated content and different channels for different things. And it was, all of us, still early days, it took us by storm by the kind of followers that they have. And Gen Z definitely is growing up on user-generated content. But there is, or could be, a flip side to it also, a massive one. Rohit, what would you say about that? What are the pros and cons of user-generated or interactive content?
So user generated, I think you can use it more smartly, and a lot of time this also gives you an idea for how you run your campaign. And just taking away from what Chhavi was saying, so when we hit 250 million as Jio, before that, a lot of users used to create videos and send it to us directly saying that, okay, my life has changed this way because now I can do video call with my parents at village and this. So we were getting, and our state offices and colleagues were getting these videos from across. So when we actually hit 250 million, we did a campaign, and that campaign was actually inspired by those user generated, and we broadly used a similar kind of, but it was an ad campaign, it had to be created creatively. But it was, the basis was those user generated content which came. The same thing we used when we did Jio Phone, and there was this, few years back, there was this program called Bhama Shah in Rajasthan, where they were giving out these handsets or actually some money to ladies in and rural areas of Rajasthan. So we thought, how do we connect? And that is when two of my team members, they actually went around Rajasthan, okay, and looking out for people who were actually using, and then they used to go and enter into conversation of how you are using it. Because many a times what we think is that this is a product, it has to be used in X particular way, and that is where we leave it. We don't realize that the user is looking at that product in a different manner. So a small phone, which was actually a little better than a feature phone, was not supposed to be used as a video phone. And then there was this Kalbelia dancer in Jaipur, and they were using these to create videos and putting it on their YouTube channel. So they created this YouTube channel, and which was a raging hit. So when our guys my colleagues went and spoke to them, they showed the channel, and they showed, this is the phone we are using. Till then, they did not disclose that we are from Jio. So that is how it works very well. But then the flip side also happens is that when you do something, when your network goes down, at least from my point of view, the same user-generated content comes back to hit you. But then we take it in a right stride that, okay, there is a problem there, you go and, address that. And the same user will come back and say, okay, now it is 3 hours and Jio guys were there and there. So same content comes back to actually support you. And this is something which we saw during the COVID period of 3 years, when actually at least 2 years, when all of us were locked in and we were working from home. Our guys were there on ground, servicing customer, laying lines, giving SIMs and connectivity. And it was around that time that we saw a huge uprise in user-generated content, because what used to happen was that if you are working from home, you don't have a SIM, you call up, somebody is in that difficult situation giving. They used to say, "Acha, aap yahan khade raho, let me make a video and I will just post it online." So it was user who was telling our guys that you stand with me, I'm going to create that. So when the brand connects, brand changes your life, brand does something very good, the user automatically is going to talk positively about you. So these are examples we have seen in our lives, and this is how it works. So flip side also, you have to be creative enough to turn it around.
Great. So I think so far we touched upon some very key points that whether it's the millennials or the Gen Z, both are definitely interested in authentic brand stories. And of course, it's very important to put it out there in a very transparent manner. If you're also keeping it to yourself, then the communication job isn't complete. At the same time, of course, today it will be cliche to say that, hey, you know, social media or digital platform, I think it's become so much part of our life, or rather our life, that in a way we've not even discussed any of the traditional media so far. But would any of you like to throw light on that when we use different medium, whether you'd like to dwell on social media or digital platforms, how the storytelling changes? Any example of that? Bhavna, would you like to do that?
See, like when we're building a campaign, our first point of discussion is what is our audience consuming? Where are they consuming? How are they consuming?
Sure.
Then we map out through data analysis. If it's Instagram, then what in Instagram? Is it a reel, or is it just a post, or just pictures, just visuals? And if it's Facebook, then is it interactive? Is it live? So we map out each channel as per the audience consumption and usage. And then we come to the point, what is the story that we want to say? Can our story be told better visually? Can our story be told better content-wise? Can our story be told through contest? Because today's Gen Zs and millennials, they love community. They are a group of people. They love participation where everybody is involved. They're not like islands like us when we were growing. Apna kaam kar diya aur chale gaye. So contest, viral, discussion forums, it all works very well with Gen Zs. Hence, it all, again, as I said, it all depends what is the story that you want to say, who you want to say, when do you want to say it, what phase of your brand journey do you want to say it. And then you choose the channels. And in the end, it all points to one thing. It has to be directly impacting your audience. If I am a real person and if I have attention span of 30 seconds, something on Instagram on reel quickly will catch my attention and I got the message. So curating your campaign basis, that is the key. Not campaign chalaya or Insta pe dal diya because your audience is here. How well are you telling the story is, I think, the trick here right now. Because you are a Gen Z, I am a Gen Z, but your consumption patterns are different from my consumption patterns, and your likes and dislikes are different from my different. But we are bracketed as Gen Zs because our attention span is less. We love collaboration, we love authenticity, we love transparency. वो crux रहेगा. But storytelling is the key here, the trick here.
So essentially, you are saying, of course, data analytics, or the TG segmentation plays a big role. But the more important thing is the Gen Z also prefer that the storytelling is customized, is personal, right? They want to have a sense of belonging. And that is how it has to be crafted. So any last points that anybody in the panel, Chhavi, Manu, that you'd like to share, that we may possibly not touch upon, or you'd like to add, please?
No, I think we kind of got our hands around the whole thing. Just very quickly on what you said on not having touched on print media. I think even though we are talking millennials and Gen Z, the role of media in every form has its play. I would say storytelling, again, depending on what the purpose is, can also begin with something like an ad or a hoarding. For example, when we launch a new destination, the first touch point besides doing all the noise that we do on various kind of digital media, is kind of reaching out to the airports and the areas around the airport to just put out a splash saying IndiGo is coming, stuff like that. So I think every media has a role to play, even if it's Gen Z. It is noticeable, it what catches the eye, and more importantly, what is recurringly catching their eye. So you use all forms of media at different times of the brand, as Bhavna also said, just to see that it is constantly being, laid out in front of them,
Sure.
given the attention span is small.
Sure. Wonderful. I think we had some great takeaways from today's session. Ultimately, nothing beats authenticity and walking the talk. And of course, the communication is going to keep evolving as we keep treading forward in the years. Today's millennials will be Gen X for the Gen Z at some point of time. I like to share one set of trivia. So the Gen Alpha, which is basically up till 0 and let's say 10 years or 11 years right now, in just next 2 years, which is by 2025, they are going to be a population of 2 billion, which is going to be the largest population. So some discussions, Rohit, that we were having backstage about AI and chatbot. So I think the PR and the communication professionals need to sprint forward exponentially in terms of especially understanding the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha is right there. But another set of trivia which don't want to scare anybody in the room is there's something called the Gen C. Anybody knows what that is? Gen C? So Gen C is basically the generation which is irrespective of your age group, whether you are 10 or you're 100, it is all about the mindset. So you could be 5, you could be 10, you could be 50, and yet you catch on to what's going on and keep a very healthy and active mindset. So hoping that irrespective of our generations, we continue to stay Gen Z. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that wonderful insight. And ending on such a joyous note, thank you so much. Once again, please give it up for all the panel members and, of course, our session chair, Bhawna Gupta, Chhavi Leekha, Manu Kumar, Rohit Dubey, and, of course, once again, Vinita Bhatia. Thank you so much. I would request all the panel members to please pose for a photograph. 1, 2, 3, say cheese. All right, thank you so much.